Welcome, everyone, to another edition of Stand Alone, where I only want to bring people that I have ultra levels of respect for to you because we talk about one of the most important things, leadership. Stand Alone is about moving from ordinary to extraordinary, and you can only do this when you make a decision to stop letting life just happen to you, but you make an effort to lead your life. And we talk about so many things in business, but it's not possible to have an ultra successful life if your health is left unchecked. And for me, science has been an integral part of my life. I was studying to become a doctor, and I got into the business world, but I have with me a doctor that I have such tremendous respect for. So this is going to be an enjoyment for me as much as it's going to be an enjoyment for everyone else. A double board certified doctor. Your background, Dr. Amy Shah, is in allergies, immunology, nutrition. And I love this because you are, to me, what a doctor has to be. Like, we understand wellness. It's not just about treating the sickness, but then how do we make people well? How do we heal them? And then your background, I love that you talk about culture and tradition, because I wanted to kick this off with you today. So many of us, Dr. Amy Shah, welcome first and foremost. So many of us have, we have these traditions and we have these cultures that we grow up in, and then we get this advice, and it creates a conflicting environment in our world, because when it comes to food, it's such a major part of our life. It influences us. And I wanted us to go into this. It's a great topic today, where people are starting to understand the microbiome, the gut and brain connection. But you're a genius. And why you're a genius, and what I think a genius is someone who can take the ultra complex and then break it down so everyday people can understand. So I wanted to really do this and situate this conversation around this, because it's such an important topic, our health, our wellness, and I can't think of having it with anyone better than you. So welcome.
Thank you so much. What a great welcome.
Yeah, and I wanted to kick this off. I think when a lot of us, for me, it was my parents' pride to become a doctor, and I, like, when I got into the business world, I never stopped learning about science and health because I really did love it. But what you were able to do is something that I admire, because if I was to go see a doctor, I want to see a doctor like you that understands the 360-degree approach to health and wellness. So was it chance that made you study nutrition first and then go to medical school? How did this happen? And then what made you set off to build this great career for yourself?
Sabrina, such a great question. When I went to nutrition school, there was no connection between nutrition and medicine, shockingly. I mean, in the last, 15 years, it's really blown up. But back then, it was a separate field. It was almost like not even connected to medicine. Most of the people in my class were not going to go to medical school. And so I was interested in it because I believed that food really influenced a lot about our lives. And I chose to go to medical school to study this further. But at that time, it was still novel. Like, for example, I'll give you an example. When I told my advisor that I was interested in how food is medicine, as food affects the body, she said, "Oh, we've been talking about doing a major within the nutrition school, but it's not ready yet. But this is what it would be like. It would be biology, it would be pre-med classes, it would be nutrition. And then there's a couple of classes that's the overlap of biology, nutrition, and medicine." And I said, "Yes, that's exactly what I would want to do." And so it wasn't even a field of study at that time. And I did it. And, lo and behold, of course, I go to medical school, I go to my training programs, and I realize that there's not much nutrition at all when we go to the doctor. I mean, it's changing now, obviously, but things just, you're not getting good dietary advice from the traditional practitioner. And so I knew I had to change something. And that's when I started to educate and talk more about it. And then social media became a nice way to talk about it.
Yeah, and I love that you pair it with immunology because, you think about nutrition and you think about immunology. If you can explain to everyone what is immunology and why that connection of nutrition and immunology is so important and how that relates to what we call the microbiome. If you could explain that to everyone, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, and I think it's so important to understand this because this is the crux of the issue. Like I wrote a book called I'm So Effing Tired because when I discovered, oh, thank you.
Yes,
When
great book.
I discovered that energy and how we feel and what our mood is on a daily basis depends on this interplay between our immune system and our gut and our brain. And that happens in our GI tract. So basically, when you eat something, your gut bacteria communicates to your immune system like, hey, this is good food, or hey, this looks very foreign to me. I need your help in figuring out what it is. So there's a constant crosstalk between the gut bacteria and your immune cells. And so everything we eat, everything we put into our bodies, not even just food, goes through this process where the gut bacteria look at it, the immune system looks at it, they talk about it, they communicate with the brain. So you can imagine why, when you drink alcohol and you eat really unhealthy foods, the next day you kind of feel hungover, not only in the sense of alcohol, but also in the sense of the food that you ate, because your body your body basically was signaling to your brain that, hey, there's all this toxin. You got to slow down. You got to be sleepy. You have to not do such deep thinking because we need to fix the problem here. If you've ever seen a dog or an animal, when they get sick, the first thing you notice is they're kind of down. They're sleeping a lot. They're not really moving too much. That's what happens to us. But then, Sabrina, if you think about it, for all of us who want to do our best work and want to be our best selves in our relationships and our business, that matters. Then the food that you eat matters because now it makes sense, like why you feel tired and you can't think straight when you are eating a very poor diet. And so I think that food brain connection makes it so clear why we have to prioritize this.
Yeah. And especially, we live in this world where everyone wants to be successful. We don't even, in America, we don't even want to be successful. We want to be ultra successful. We don't know when enough is enough. We just keep going and going and going. And that's why this is such an important conversation today. When I picked up your book, I first read it on Kindle. And a book is good when you have to buy the physical copy also after you read it in Kindle, because it's filled with recipes. It's almost like a reference book. You have to go back and digest it and read it again to let it really seep into you. But you talk about in here, just for people to understand when we talk about a microbiome and like the brain and the gut connection, this is something that's incredibly important that, for people to understand at the most basic level, there is so much bacteria in our gut. And in your book, you talk about, we have 23,000 genes, but these little organisms and just in our gut have 3.3 million. And so we don't understand how powerful they are, and I call them they're living organisms inside of us. And so when we don't feel right, there's a reason for that. Mm-hmm. And if you could explain to people, like, when you eat, you are feeding them. When you eat bad, what is that doing to this ecosystem that's living inside of us? And how it doesn't matter if you don't get this under control and you're trying to be ultra successful, it will topple you. And you had an event in your life where, and it's the title of your book, right? Where you were just like, you got to this moment in your life, you're like, okay, something's got to give. Yeah. And they're going to win. They're going to win. So could you help to equip us so we really get this and understand why they're so powerful?
I think the best way to think about it is when historically, the turn of the century in London, there was a scientist, Strachan, who said, oh, that's strange. All the children that come to see me from these wealthy families that moved to London for the Industrial Revolution, they're getting all these sicknesses that are different from the kids that are in the farms. And so he started to research what the differences were and why there was all this difference between the two groups. And it started to seed the idea in medicine that there was something that we are doing in the modern, like rich, industrialized world that was not good, but we weren't sure what it was. And as the years have gone on, it's literally pointing more and more to this concept of this gut bacterial world that lives in our gut. It's getting ravished by the way we eat, by the way we live, probably by other things like toxins and pollution, but really by the way we eat is probably the number one thing. So what happens is, as we got richer, we stripped away the fiber from foods, because it sucks to eat a super fibrous piece of bread or super and a sugar that's from a sugar cane. So everybody started to learn techniques to kind of refine it, to make it easier to use. But the problem is our gut bacteria, they eat that fiber. That's their food, their primary food. And what we didn't realize is by making our modern food supply, we're basically starving these bacteria. So now we have 97% of Americans that don't get even the minimum quantity of fiber that would take to keep these gut bacteria alive. So imagine you had an army that's living inside of you that's starving to death. I mean, that's exactly what's happening. And so that realization came, all the way in the turn of the century. We knew that there's some weird differences between the bacteria in the guts of the kids and the, modern, whatever, industrialized rich kids. And now we're learning, okay, this is the crux of why we're getting sicker, more obese, more depressed, more anxious, like basically everything kind of fits with this model. And so that's why I'm so interested in it, because I'm like, not only do I want to improve the way I age, obviously we all do, but we also want to improve the way we feel right now, like our mood and the way we're able to do our work and our ability to have a good body composition. So we feel good. We're like, obesity has become epidemic proportions because of this gut-brain disconnection. And so much of what we're dealing with today is a result of the damage to our gut microbiome.
Yeah. And you really dive into this, you start your book talking about energy, and then you finish it with energy, which I really, really like. It's like a full circle, but it's also important too. And I want to get into fasting a little later on, but I have a global audience and people around the world are very interested in success. And so I always come back to like a business mindset.
Yeah.
If you can explain to entrepreneurs, that it's the same way that you have to look at your business, and you have to have systems in line, and you have to have processes to have a fully functioning business, instead of you being worn out and every day going in there and be like, what are we doing today? You got to treat your body the same way. Like you have to have a system for eating. And when you get, and I wanted to ask you this, like, can you feed the good bacteria so that you start to crave better food, and then you start to not like the food that we've almost been trained to eat that's bad for us and hurting us?
Yeah, absolutely. So when it's like the same concept in business, that action is first and then motivation comes second. So just like you said, building the habits and the systems is what actually is going to make you more motivated to make further changes. And it's so counterintuitive, because you feel like you should wake up with motivation and then things will start to change. But when it comes to gut health and success in business, you have to take the successful steps first, and the motivation starts to follow. So, like you said, in life, in business, it might be waking up early and getting done the 3 most difficult tasks of the day. And the more you do these systems, both in health and mindset, the stronger you become and the more motivated you become. So something as simple as getting a little bit of natural light in the morning, getting up at a reasonable early hour. So we've shown over and over that people that wake up earlier tend to have better moods, better microbiomes, better access, better adherence to exercise. So whatever an earlier means to you, you do a outdoor time, maybe it's just 2 minutes, maybe it's just walking from your far parking spot to the office, right? So getting natural light. And it sounds so stupid, but we don't do it. So getting natural light is really important when it comes to putting a system in. So that happens if you put a little bumper in your morning, and maybe you have a morning routine that includes an exercise or a fasted walk outside. And then maybe you do your first meal of the day a little bit later than usual. And I still believe in breakfast, but I think that you don't need to roll out of bed and have your orange juice and banana. You can work out, you can do a few things before you have your first meal of the day. And then creating a system to eating most of your food in the daylight hours is something that can really help your gut microbiome, because these gut bacteria, if you think about them like an army, this army needs to sleep and it needs to repair it, just like we need to sleep, and we feel exhausted the next day if we've stayed up super late night after night. These gut bacteria feel the same way when you're eating very late at night and huge meals, which is what a lot of people around the world do. And we found that it follows circadian rhythms, just like our brain follows circadian rhythms. And so having some systems in place, just doing a couple of these things, can absolutely change your entire motivation to be healthy as well. So like people who get natural light just end up being more motivated to exercise, to do things. Their mood improves. As you know, with people who live in really dark, cold climates, they just automatically often notice a lower sense of well-being. So adding a couple of things, it doesn't have to be bright outside, it can be gray, it can be overcast, it can be rainy. Just natural light itself is very, very soothing. And what I think of it is like, it resets our clocks in our brains, and it feels good when we're in line with the circadian rhythm.
Yeah, it's funny because when you train to be a doctor, you put yourself under tremendous amounts of stress. And one of the things I was reading where you said it, I think it was on your Instagram, you're like not sleeping night after night, not getting enough sun, not eating right, eating late, toxic thoughts, toxic people. There's no medicine in the world that's going to help you. And I think this is so important because it brings me to talk about something I really want to dive into with you, because I really trust your opinion. And, you're very well educated and you understand the 360 approach. And what I'm talking about is stress. This is something that a lot of us, we're feeling a little bit more stress than we ever have right now in this moment. And is that because of the outer world? Is that also because of what's going on inside of us? What is the connection to food and stress? And then to lead this conversation into fasting, which is a form of stress that we put on ourselves, but it's actually a good stress.
Yeah.
So could you explain to us, do we interpret, do some of us take stress and thrive in it? Versus some of us take stress and we just don't know how to handle it. Is that something that's inside of us that's not allowing us to handle stress?
Yeah, I think that's a difficult question. There's definitely genetic and intersex and individual variations on how you process stress, but 100% your habits and your food impact your ability to process stress. So just like I told you that the gut and the immune system are constantly talking, in that conversation is our hormones. So our cortisol, our stress hormones, our estrogen and progesterone for women, testosterone for men. It's like sex hormones and stress hormones and hunger hormones that are also in that conversation. And so what they, just like you said kind of before in one of your statements, you were saying about how sometimes we crave things based on the gut bacteria, because the gut bacteria releases these chemicals that tells our hormone system to want these foods, our brain to want these foods. So the hormones and our ability to process stress are intimately involved in this gut, immune conversation. So obviously that means that when you improve your diet, your sleep habits, your circadian rhythms, automatically you are going to be better able to process stress. The other thing is that stress is definitely something that is like um, exercise and fasting is there's so many stressors in our life. There's emotional stress, but then there's physical stress, exercise, and there's metabolic stress, which is like sauna and fasting. And these stresses are meant to strengthen our body. So just like we said, emotional stress, like what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. It's the same thing with exercise and with fasting and with heat and cold stress. Like these things were made to be uncomfortable, but they make you stronger. It's just that you don't want to do all of it at once. Like you don't want to have high emotional stress right now, and you're not sleeping well, and you want to fast like way more than you usually do, and you want to be on a low calorie diet, and you want to exercise. I mean, if you try to do all that together, it's a recipe for disaster. And and I know that there are many popular diets out there that kind of like pair all of that together. And then you have a recipe for disaster. It's like saying you have 10 deadlines on the same day at work, like something's going to give or something's going to break. And you have to learn how to do those stressors in a way that is not going to have a deleterious additive effect. So what I tell people is like, add one thing at a time. So if you've never exercised, then don't go run a marathon, on your first week. Like, obviously, so same thing with fasting. Like if you've never fasted, then don't do 16, 17, 18 hours every day. That's not going to work. So, you want to do these things that strengthen you, but you want to give it in small doses. And same thing, like we talk about mental stress, right? In business, like you want to get yourself stronger. And little stresses and little problems, little fires make you stronger for the big fire later. But you don't really want to rush that process. You want to get stronger as time goes on. So that's how I think of kind of stacking it together.
It's really good. It's just like in business, we have to have like small victories,
Yes.
like stack them. And a lot of people today, a lot of people are trained to be like, it's all or nothing. Like if
Yes.
I don't do well here, well, maybe it's not meant to be. No, that's not how this goes, right? Just like when you fail at a diet, okay, well, don't go binge and eat
Yeah.
everything bad now because you made a small little misstep.
That's the
Get
thing.
back on track.
Unfortunately, our social media world right now shows overnight success for business, overnight success for diet, overnight success for fasting, right? So like we are seeing all these people and we think it's real. And we think that they didn't spend 10, 15, 20 years getting to the place where they are. And you get tricked into thinking that you must be doing something wrong because you're going so slow. I see that all the time.
Yeah. What's really great about you is that you're very non-judgmental, and in business, I got very judgy. And so I had to learn how to not judge as much. And especially being a doctor, I think like kudos to you, because you could be very judgmental. You could be that doctor's like, no, this doesn't work. Like you have to do this, but you do really an amazing job at looking at the overall approach. And I like what you say about, just listen to your body, watch how you process things. And you talk about this energy trifecta in your book, which I love. And it's the gut health, the hormones, and the immune system. And one of the ways that we can gauge our body, because what I can eat will be different from what you can eat because we process things differently based on this microbiome. Correct me if anything I'm saying is wrong, right?
No, you're all right.
But is inflammation a source of information to see, well, this is not reacting with me right now? And then
Yeah.
how do we correct it? For dairy is something that's a big thing for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And so if you could explain to the audience, and this is so helpful in business too, your ability to process information, to look at feedback serves you. And your body is the exact same way. Like if you eat something and you get inflamed and you keep on eating it, what will chronic inflammation do? how do we cut this chain of reaction that we're in and reverse it now? Can you break that down for us? What is inflammation?
Mhm.
What is this information telling us? What's happening in our body? And how do we break this cycle so we can regain control over our body and our lives?
Yeah, that's such a great question. So that immune system and that gut bacteria are part of our immune system where they sense if anything's going wrong. It's like a surveillance team, right? Like your army that's in your body. And if there is some place that they need to go and check out, they'll radio each other and they'll go check it out. And that's inflammation. Obviously that's happening at every moment of the day because there's something, that you might have tweaked in your muscle, and then there's something that they have to fix in your gut, so there's always inflammation going on. That's absolutely normal. But what happens in our world, our modern world, is that we're getting a lot of inflammatory inputs. It's like saying you got bad news, like 10 different bad news in a day, and you have to kind of fend to all the fires. And that's the thing that's happening with our bodies. Like, you are absolutely supposed to be able to handle inflammation. That's normal. But when you get like a lot of hits at once, and on a daily basis, it's very exhausting to the immune system. And what ends up happening is that there's some misfiring, and then there's some fires that can't be tended to. So, for example, achy joints, you get reactions to foods that are supposed to be fine. You get headaches, all of these things are inflammatory signs or can be inflammatory signs, muscle pain, that kind of thing, fatigue. So what we're dealing with sometimes is over inflammation. So like too much inflammatory input, because guess what? Our diet is very inflammatory. Sugar is super inflammatory. Alcohol is inflammatory. Some of the toxins that we take in, obviously smoking, but also pollution, these are all inflammation. And then you get all of that at once, and that can be too much for some people's bodies.
And could this inflammation affect someone's hormones? So then now, like, you feel bad about something and you start making bad decisions.
Yeah. Yeah. It's all connected. Like that energy trifecta that I was telling you, that you were mentioning, the hormone, the gut, and the immune system, it's constantly in communication with our brain. And so if there's a lot of inflammation, it almost feels like a poor gut health, almost feels like poor hormone health, and your brain responds to it. So when people are like, my hormones are off, or they think they have adrenal fatigue, meaning like they feel very, very stressed out, often it's a problem of gut health or immune health or brain health. Like the energy trifecta affects each other. So when you're eating foods that are making you inflamed, it will almost feel like you have a hormone imbalance. And you'll show up in the world like a hormone imbalance, like a gut imbalance. And really it's your immune system, your inflammation that was the main issue.
And this can affect your emotions too.
100%. Like, in fact, I think people don't realize that dopamine, serotonin, all these like chemicals that we think only our brain produces, no, our gut bacteria produces that. And so all of this stuff that's happening when you eat and what you do with sunlight and sleep, that's giving signals to your brain to be happy, to be sad, to be mad, to be frustrated. And so a lot of our emotions are really linked to what's going on inside of our body.
I love this. One of the principles I have in business is never make a decision in the dark. Like
Yeah.
when something bad is happening, like don't react. So what I do is I go deeper into the work and I figure out like what's happening so I can respond better. And it's almost like when in your body, it's like when you feel bad, then you're emotionally unstable, your hormones are off. You're like, well, let me eat another Oreo. No.
Yes, exactly. You want to react really fast because your brain wants to soothe. Okay. So one thing, Sabrina, I wanted to tell people is like, our bodies are really wired to make it easy for our brains. So when we're stressed, our brain is wired to think about, okay, what did she do the last time she was really stressed that helped us soothe ourselves? And it's like a pattern that happened maybe when you were a kid and maybe you ate Oreos. to soothe yourself, and it gave a little burst of dopamine, and your body felt good, your brain felt soothed for a little while. And so it will search for those old patterns. When you're tired, when you're stressed, and when your guard is kind of down, that's when you make these impulsive, like almost like these are neurological pathways that were already set from maybe many years ago. Some of them are good, some of them are very bad. And you just end up going to that pathway. That's why it's so hard to change that bad habit. Like I had this habit, I'll tell you, when I would come home from work every single day, I would walk straight into the pantry, and I was stressed, I was overwhelmed, I was tired from the day, and I would just walk impulsively to the pantry, because that was my neurological system saying, like, you need to soothe yourself. And that's how you used to always soothe yourself when you were a kid, or what your parents taught you to do to soothe yourself. And so I'd go there and I'd eat something before dinner that was soothing. And then of course I messed up, I had bad food before dinner. I was hungry, so I over consumed. And I had to break that neurological pattern. It's so hard. I literally would say, I'm not allowed to walk to the right because that's where the pantry is. I have to walk to the left and go to my room, have a drink or water, sparkling water, Zevia, whatever, and kind of learn to de-stress in self-soothe and relax in a way that wasn't bringing me further away from my goals, So it's really, like you said, you don't want to react immediately. When you see a toxic pattern, and you have to really look at your life and say, like, when does this break down for me? Like, when am I doing when am I really falling apart when it comes to my health? And you'll find times that tend to be, when you're stressed, when you're tired, when you're, for women, it's that certain time of the month right before their periods, like you fall back into these old neurological patterns, and they can be changed if you just take like immediate action to try to rewire that pathway.
Yeah, I think this is why everyone, when you get the book, it'll slowly start to make you really understand at a deeper level what's really going on. And then what that does for you is it removes kind of like the guilt and the shame that you have, because it's like, no, this is biological at what's going on here. And when you understand that, like it gives you the power to make different decisions so you can change your biology.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. And so what we're talking about right now is like kind of like the problems we're all in right now. And then I love, on Instagram, you're called Fasting MD. And that's how I first found you, right? Because I started when I turned 40, Dr. Amy Shah, like I really wanted to gain control of my life. I didn't want to, when I was younger, I thought 40-year-olds were dinosaurs,
Yeah.
and now
Yeah.
I'm over 40, and I'm like, no, I'm going to rewrite what it means to be 40, and I'm going to change
100%.
that story. And so I started to look into fasting. And what I really started to understand is that fasting is the solution to a lot of the problems that we have. And if you could describe to everyone what is fasting and why not eating helps.
Yeah. It's crazy to me to think that this has become such a charged topic for people. And that's because they think of fasting as just one thing. Fasting is just taking a break from food, right? So that could be as simple as an overnight fast, which most of us do, just not long enough, to a 24-hour or a 3-day or a 5-day fast, right? So 3 and 5, even 24-hour fasts are akin to running a marathon or running a half marathon when it comes to exercise, whereas an overnight fast is more like going for a walk or yoga or, some kind of gentle form of exercise. So you can have your range of fasting, depending on what kind of results, what your interests are. A lot of us aren't interested in running a marathon or doing a triathlon, and some of us just want the basic benefits. And so overnight fasting is something very basic that people can do. Basically means that instead of eating 16 hours a day, which is what Americans tend to eat, like the last, dessert, and then the first thing in the morning is like barely a break of 8 hours, extend that to 12 hours. and just do like a 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. fast. And that will be hard in the beginning. It sounds so easy, but it's really hard because most of us like to snack in the evenings. And most of us don't realize that, hey, back just even 100 years ago, there was no drive-throughs, late night eats. There was not even, microwaves or electricity. People did not eat high amounts of food late at night. Their dinners were more like sunset. And then you maybe nibble on something small, but you weren't having the majority of your food late at night. And so that's why fasting makes so much physiological sense, because even though our times have changed, our body still functions on that clock. And so respecting that clock is going to improve your health in ways you didn't even imagine.
And what does not eating do to our microbiome? What does
Yeah.
that give them a chance to do? Like,
So, our body can't be doing everything at once. So during the day, it's focusing on digestion, extraction of vitamins, etc. During the night, when you fast, is when it is repairing and renewing and fixing all of the problems. So we will see people with gut health issues. They tend to say when they eat late at night, their symptoms flare up that night and the day after, because it's like your repair and renewal processes didn't get adequate time to work. And if you think about it this way, that our body always has, every cell in our bodies is on a clock, and it can only do, can't do everything at once. So it focuses on metabolism and thinking and the daytime activities. And then at night, it focuses on repair and renewal, clean out. And you want that. That's just as important as the daytime activities, right? So being mindful of really giving your body that chance is akin to getting sleep. Like we talk about sleep like in the media, like every single day in every single article, yet we never talk about fasting in that way.
yeah, in your book, you talk about autophagy. This is something that I really dive deeply into to understand. Like, I the last 7 years, I had three children, and so the hormones and the up and down and the weight gain and the weight loss, and just being a woman in today's time, we put so much stress on ourselves to like
Mhm.
lead by example and not make excuses. And
Yes.
like, I just felt like the title of your book, like I was effing tired. And I was
Yes.
like, my body needs a moment. And so when I started reading about autophagy, if you can explain that to people, like it gave my body a chance to almost like regenerate itself, if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah. Autophagy is a cellular process that's always happening, actually. Like, so it's not like it turns on and off per se, but it turns up when it sees that no one is coming, meaning that there's no food coming. It starts to turn up the process of autophagy, which is a cellular deep clean out. And in fact, when you see a cell that has undergone autophagy, it looks younger and cleaner and fresher than a cell that has not. And so that's the big draw of having some time where you're fasted, because it's like people coming to your door, like on Halloween night, right? Like, people ring your doorbell and they ring your doorbell and finally around 10 o'clock, for some people it's midnight, you hear the last person leave, and then you start to clean up everything. You start to put everything away. You actually have a chance to do all the things you need to do before the next morning. Whereas if you had guests coming in at every moment all night long, or way late into the evening, that process just either wouldn't happen or it would be severely truncated. And so that autophagy is this beautiful cellular regeneration, like a big clean out, deep clean out that you want your body to undergo.
Yeah, it's just like in business too, right? This is why we recruit. We're always seeking new talent. Like you have to replenish and clean
Yeah.
out, like take the garbage out is a great way to look at it. Like do the cleaning. I wanted to, briefly just touch on women because I wanted to wrap up with this. You're a doctor, you're very successful. Um, you understand that women are different. And I say this all the time, when I got into business, there was things I had to learn, and it took me a little longer because I am a woman. There's things that we go through that men don't go
Yeah.
through. And so I had to adapt differently. But if you could just, help women understand that, different isn't a bad thing. You have to
Right.
understand your body. And if you could, just tie this into, especially in today's world where we're trying to all be the same. And, I say this to everyone, like, we're not all the same.
Yeah.
Like, that is a great
Yeah.
big fat lie. We're
Yeah.
not all the same. So as a woman trying to do it all, trying to gain health, like, why is it okay for you to sit down and say, I am different, but that's a good thing? And that could be something that can empower me to understand my body at a deeper level. In your book, you brought up this amazing thing where the NIH didn't mandate women to be researched or included in the studies until 1994.
Isn't
So
that crazy?
that's
It's like
insane.
mind blowing to me that we don't. And when they looked at it just recently, even after my book came out, there was a study that showed that even since 1994, most of the studies that include women never look at the sex differences, meaning that they have women in it, but they make conclusions based on the big group. Like they don't see like, wait, did it affect women differently? Did it like sex related differences are not even looked at still. And so what they found is like there are certain medications, like Ambien is a sleeping medication. Okay. It is not just that women tend to be smaller, for example. It is metabolized differently because of our hormones. And
Yes.
it's not just as simple as, oh, I'll just apply this to you. It's like, no, it's not applicable to me. I metabolize it completely different. And so what we're realizing now is that our hormones, and we know this as women, right? Our hormones affect everything from your brain to your muscle to your fat gain to your emotions, hormone. And everybody knows because that week before your period, you feel like the world is crashing and you're craving every chocolate cake. And then all of a sudden you feel like a different person, like a few days into your period. So hormone differences are absolutely so strong that we don't even understand yet what the difference is. So we know like women have an advantage in many, many ways. Estrogen is very protective in terms of like heart disease. It tends to be very protective. It helps with fat loss. Actually, women burn more fat when they're exercising than men because of estrogen. So there's a lot of good things about having hormones. We live longer on average. That seems to be hormonal, less certain illnesses, but we have more mental health illnesses. We have more pain related illnesses. So we definitely, there's differences and we have to learn. Like I wrote an article, Sabrina, on the website, which is in the book too, about how to like sync with your cycle better as a woman. And it was the most read and shared article, not because it was because nobody had read that before. Nobody had realized that your hormones we could understand it in a way that could help us tweak our life and give us more power. Because when we're trying to lead in this world, we can't lead in the same way if we don't understand our own bodies. And yes, there's individual differences, but there's definitely gender differences. And so understanding that can help you. Like I say, for any entrepreneurs who are listening, like I say, if you're a woman and you own your own business or you have the ability to control your schedule, then the week before your period, which is called the late luteal phase or PMS in lay terms, is not the best time to make huge decisions, to have big deadlines, especially the couple days before your period. You want to kind of make that big presentation or that power move towards after your period, kind of like in the second week of your cycle, called the follicular phase, because that's going to give you the best chance hormonally to succeed.
Wow. It's just, this is why your book is so great and everyone should grab it, because especially I say this, a lot of people come to me and say like, they want to learn about like how to bring more women into their business. And I'm like, well, as a man, you still have to learn how to work with women
Yeah.
and strong women and be around that also. So I think it all starts with us wanting to understand more. And that's what I love about just the podcast, so that people can start to understand more, then get your book and understand
Yeah.
more at a deeper level. So I just wanted to say thank you for this like intro conversation. It was a lot that we tried to cover. This went
Yeah.
by so fast. And I
I
know
know.
you're a doctor, you have a practice, you're a mom, you're a wife, and you do so much. So I just wanted to say thank you for taking the time. And where can people go to find more about you, to just dive more deeply into this conversation and learn more about themselves?
Yeah, I love that. Learning more about yourself through the science is so imperative. So I'm so effing tired is the name of my book. My website is amymdwellness.com. You can kind of get to all the links there. My social media on Instagram is at fastingmd. And anyone can find me on any of those places. So I want to thank you. It's been so great to watch you. I've been learning more about your journey, and you're totally a badass lady that people should be learning from, because I think we need more leaders that look different, that work different, that act different. And even though you may not, people, it's nice to see that in the world out there.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much. Thank
Thank
you,
you so
everyone.
much.